It is February 2026, and if you have been watching the wires coming out of Ottawa lately, you know the game has just completely changed.
Oh, yeah, it really has.
Specifically, if you are the kind of person who keeps the global supply chain moving, I mean, if you keep planes in the air or heavy trucks on the highway, Canada just shifted the goalposts in a way that, frankly, we haven't seen in years.
It is a massive pivot. We are looking at a targeted update to the express entry system that just dropped on February 18th.
Right.
And it is squarely aimed at what the government is officially calling transport occupations.
Yeah.
But, and this is crucial, before anyone tunes out thinking this is just a standard, we need more drivers announcement, you really need to look closer.
Yeah, that is the very first misconception we need to clear up immediately. Because we've pulled the official policy papers from the IRCC, that's Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, and we are layering in some really sharp analysis from the Black Bear Canadian Immigration Consulting. And the picture that emerges is surprisingly technical.
It is. When you look at the fine print, this isn't a general call for labor at all.
Exactly.
This is a call for infrastructure support. And the way they have structured the requirements, specifically the work experience,
Oh, the work experience part is wild.
is the real story here.
Yeah.
Because there is a twist in the eligibility rules regarding time served that I think is going to catch a lot of applicants entirely off guard.
The non-continuous clause.
That's the one.
We are definitely going to unpack that because it arguably changes the entire definition of what a career looks like in the eyes of the government. But let's ground this first. Set the scene for us.
Okay, so we are at the Canadian Club in Toronto. Immigration Minister Lena Metledge-Diab takes the stage.
And what is the actual headline event?
The headline is that the federal government is officially launching a new category-based selection stream. But unlike previous streams that might have been broad, like healthcare, for instance, this one is laser-focused on specific NOC codes.
And just a quick reminder, those are the National Occupational Classification Codes that define basically every job in Canada.
Right, exactly.
And looking at this list, I mean, it is a very specific slice of the transport sector. We aren't seeing taxi drivers or courier delivery roles here.
No, not at all.
We are looking at the people who keep the actual machines running.
Exactly. This is entirely about the machinery and, critically, the safety of that machinery.
So let's run down the golden ticket jobs. Because if you fall into one of these buckets, your odds of moving to Canada just skyrocketed. First up, we have NOC 72600, that is air pilots, flight engineers, and flying instructors.
The people in the cockpit.
Sure.
But notice the inclusion of instructors there.
Oh, right.
That is key for building future capacity. They don't just want people to fly today.
Yeah.
They want people to train the next generation.
That makes sense. Then we move to the ground with NOC 724 Avio, automotive service technicians, but specifically for trucks and buses.
And that distinction is vital. It isn't the person driving the bus. It is the person keeping the bus from breaking down on the 401 highway. It's the heavy maintenance crew.
Right, the heavy lifters. And then back to aviation with NOC 724 SU4, which is aircraft mechanics and inspectors. And finally, and this one stood out to me as the most specialized, NOC 22333.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Aircraft instrument, electrical, and avionics technicians.
Avionics is huge. That is the nervous system of modern aircraft. You can't just train someone to do that in a few weeks. And this brings us to the classification itself. All of these roles fall under Tier 0 to 3.
Okay, and for the listeners who aren't glued to immigration policy manuals 24/7, let's clarify that. TIER stands for Training, Education, Experience, and Responsibilities. It's the government's hierarchy of skill. Tier 0 to 3 basically means high-skilled, right?
It does. It confirms that Canada isn't looking for entry-level labor here. They're actively looking for technical expertise. By flagging these as Tier 0 to 3, the government is signaling that these roles require significant post-secondary education or lengthy, intensive apprenticeships. They're literally treating these workers as essential technical infrastructure.
It feels like a direct response to the supply chain fragility we have been hearing about for the last 3 years. I mean, we've seen what happens when you don't have enough people to service the planes.
It is entirely reactive to that.
Yeah.
If you look at the government's rationale, the why behind the policy, they explicitly list supply chain resilience and aviation safety.
Right.
You can't expand trade corridors if you don't have the mechanics to service the fleets. You can build all the airports you want, but if the avionics techs aren't there to sign off on the safety checks, those planes stay on the tarmac.
So they have identified the who, the pilots, the mechanics, the techs, Now, usually when a government gets desperate for a specific type of worker, the next move is to lower the bar. You expect them to say, hey, come on in, we'll make it easy.
Usually, yes. You'd expect faster processing times or lowered requirements.
But looking at the black bear analysis we have here, that is not quite what happened. In a weird plot twist, they actually raised the experience requirement.
They did. And this is where it gets really interesting strategically. Previously, under the Canadian Experience Class, or Standard Skilled Worker routes, you were looking at a baseline of 6 months of continuous experience in some contexts to become eligible for certain streams.
Just 6 months.
Yeah, but for this new transport stream, they have firmly set the bar at 1 full year.
So on the surface, it is harder. You need double the time in the seat before you can even raise your hand to apply.
On the surface, yes. It filters out the people who just dip their toes into the industry. But, and this is the massive but, here they paired that increase with a structural change that completely alters the landscape. They changed how you can count that time.
This is the non-continuous rule.
That's the one. The new policy states you need 1 year of work experience within the last 3 years. But it does not need to be continuous.
Which is a huge departure from the old continuous qualifying period that used to trip so many people up.
It is a massive departure. Think about the aviation industry specifically, or specialized heavy-duty mechanics who work on remote sites. These industries run on contracts.
Right, the gig pilot. You might work an intense 4-month contract flying cargo during the holiday peak season, then take a month off because the contract ended, and then pick up another 3 months flying for a regional carrier.
Right. And under the old rules, that gap, that 1 month off, would have totally reset your clock.
Yeah.
You broke the chain of continuity. You were back to zero. It was incredibly punishing for contract workers.
Which is wild when you think about it, because that is just how the industry naturally works. The old rules were basically saying, we only want you if you have a traditional 9-to-5 desk job style career, even though you're a pilot.
Precisely. The system was designed for an entirely different era of employment. Now, Canada is saying, we don't care about the gap. Just show us you have 12 months of cumulative mastery within a 3-year window. You can stitch it together like a quilt.
That is actually remarkably progressive for a government policy. I mean, it feels like they are finally acknowledging the reality of the modern gig economy.
It is an acknowledgement of how modern technical work actually functions out in the real world. It allows them to capture high-quality talent people who are very, very good at what they do, but who prioritize flexibility or who work project-based roles. They aren't penalizing you for taking a break or changing contracts anymore.
So they raise the floor on total experience, ensuring you are actually skilled and not just fresh out of school, but they widen the door by removing the penalty for gaps.
That is the perfect way to put it. Black Bear Consulting called it creating a predictable pipeline of permanent skilled talent.
A predictable pipeline.
Yeah. It tells the workforce, go get your hours. However you do it, just get to 12 months, and we are ready for you. It turns the immigration process into something you can actually plan your career around, rather than hoping you don't get laid off in month 5 and lose everything.
Well, that is all the time we have for this deep dive into the 2026 transport shift. Whether you are prepping your application right now or just nerding out on policy with us, thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Catch you on the next one.